Hi everyone, hope you're all well. My name's Alex Blake and I run a company called P.M.A, obviously, which is a mental health business primarily. And I was asked to speak at this summit all around mental health. P.M.A, obviously, or P.M.A, which stands for Positive Mental Attitude, obviously, is a company I've set up to help people with mental health issues predominantly. I aim to get into workplaces, schools, universities and host talks on mental health, giving insights to how I manage, spotting the signs and symptoms, and being able to help colleagues or students, etc., who may be in a crisis. It follows 4 years of my own issues, basically. I've got bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed in 2016, and years before that, I've had to deal with my mental health from a young age, from my early teens. So I've had issues for quite a few years. And it's been a struggle for a lot of that time. I'm now in a position where I'm fully into recovery. It's an ongoing process, but now I'm actually okay. I've set up this business with the aim of helping those that need the help. I also want to work with individuals on creating a positive, resilient mindset to overcome challenges. So that's a bit about me before obviously get started on the talk, just to give you a bit of background on myself. So I've been obviously asked to speak about some of the key challenges around mental health at the moment. I think first of all, you've probably got the stigma still that surrounds mental health. It's not like physical health where you break your arm, people kind of know you're in pain, they can kind of support you. If you kind of act out or you're angry or you're short-tempered, etc., or you've got issues going on inside that no one can see where it's invisible, people tend to look the other way, and there's still a lot of ignorance around it and people don't want to always help. So I think the stigma is massive. It's becoming better, and on social media, for example, a lot more people are talking about it, and people are kind of allowing themselves to let people know that they care, and it's allowing people to kind of come out with their illnesses and allow themselves to get help if they need it. But I think there's still a long way to go, especially from, say, the older generations where they've been taught to kind of bottle things up for years. There's no wonder that the highest rate of suicide is in men of 45 to 49. So that's obviously a generation thing possibly, where people have bottled their feelings up for so many years thinking that they have to be strong, and then they end up seeing their way out. So that's one of the kind of key challenges. Another one I wanted to talk about was support. There is a lot more support out there than people think. You've got a load of charities, organisations, businesses. You've got people like mental health first aiders that are being educated on mental health to not only help themselves, but help others as well. Obviously, people probably already know the charities such as Samaritans, Mind. You've got Rethink Mental Illness, Heads Together. The list goes on. There's plenty out there. And they all kind of do different things. Samaritans, for example, I've volunteered there for over a year, so I can vouch for the service they provide. They won't give any advice, but they're not just for people in crisis, kind of maybe potentially suicidal or had a suicide plan. They are for people just as a friendly person, a stranger that they can speak to just talk about whatever's going on in their mind. Just by talking, hopefully you can get a bit more clarity and become clearer on your problems. And by speaking to someone, a problem shared is a problem halved. So they do a great service. A 24/7, 365, and that's just one charity. But as I say, there's loads of support out there. I think so. Obviously you've got the NHS, and obviously going to see your GP, for example, in a first instance, they can obviously recommend you to get the help you need. But as we all probably know, or anyone who's experienced mental health illnesses, there can be a long waiting list, which is a key challenge I feel at the moment, because sadly it may come too late. That you may get on a waiting list, or you may only be seen urgently if you're at a place where you feel like you can't carry on. So that is a big key challenge, which hopefully, especially during this coronavirus lockdown, there's got to be a priority or a focus from the government, for example, on mental health, getting the support out there, getting the numbers, getting the training, the education, because 1 in 4 experience a mental health issue every year. That was a statistic before coronavirus even occurred. So that statistic's probably escalated quite a lot, I would say, since coronavirus started and lockdown, say, began around March time of this year. With coronavirus, obviously another key challenge will be isolation and loneliness. People don't want to talk about if they're lonely because it's shown as weakness, for example. But with coronavirus and it's reducing people, the guidelines are easing and going up and down and fluctuating. Obviously, we don't know what we're doing is going to be for such a long period. But there is isolation, and when you can't see your friends, family, or speak to your loved ones, you do feel isolated and you feel like you're kind of stuck in your own head. And it's about, obviously with technology, I suppose, that's one way where we can stay connected as best as we can do. And finally, another key challenge I would say would be, obviously with coronavirus, there's a lot of uncertainty over the future. Jobs potentially are at risk, money, finance worries, just to name a few. Obviously you've got children potentially that you need to look after, provide food for, etc. There's so much uncertainty and it's understandably causing worry for many. So that's another key challenge that I think we're facing at the moment. Obviously I said a few statistics, but I did also want to mention that there was a statistic I saw that by 2030, depression is seen as the world's biggest health problem, which is quite a scary statistic, overtaking obviously that there's a lot of serious illnesses out there, but that is one that can be managed. And if the support is out there, the stigma is reduced, and you can potentially talk to whoever, whether it's just a friend or a colleague, or if you need to get professional help, what I would try and say is don't be ashamed to get the help in the first place. As I say, I was there previously on more than one occasion. I've been at rock bottom and I was scared to get help. I found it was I thought it was weakness to speak up, and it got to the point where I just felt I couldn't carry on. Getting to the point where you do get the help, slowly but surely, once you realise there's no short-term fix, but you can manage it over time and develop your mindset to become positive and overcome challenges, it's manageable. So this statistic about depression being the world's biggest health worry in 10 years time, there's ways that we can manage it, and that is something that needs to be educated, and people need to know how to manage their own mental health and look out for others that are going through issues, basically. Prevention is better than cure is another thing I wanted to talk about. Going off of what I just said, if we can educate each other to understand if we're getting affected by depression or another mental health illness, for example, we can recognise the signs earlier, we can find a cure quicker, well, not a cure, sorry, but we can get help quicker, and that's going to be a lot easier to treat than someone who's at crisis point, potentially wanting to take their own life, and that becomes a bigger journey, if you like, to get better. So that's something that I wanted to talk about. Government funding. I've done a bit of research into government funding, and I know there's a lot more involved in mental health as a priority for schools, for example. Now, I know there's a lot more on the agenda in schools for treating mental health and educating children into knowing and understanding their own mental health. I know Prince William's got the Heads Together charity, and he's looking to do a lot of work in mental health, just in going around seeing as many people as he can to get people talking about it, because that's the big thing, is talking about it. If you talk about it, it becomes easier, and you realise the more you talk about it, it's not as a big problem as you make up in your head, and it's just something you need to just kind of nip in the bud quicker. And once you do that, it becomes a lot easier going onwards. That's one of the main things I would say, is to just don't be afraid to open up to whoever it is, someone that you trust, that you can share your darker thoughts with, I guess. So, how do we reshape the health of the nation? As I say, regular conversation has to be a must. So we need to obviously reduce the stigma, allow people to talk about it without judgment. Don't judge someone if they're going to be sharing something private or something that's really matters to them. I think everyone's probably guilty of it in the past. Maybe have said comments like, "Oh, it's not so bad, cheer up, get on with it, what have you got to be sad about, etc. But those kind of comments will stop people from talking about it to that person or potentially anyone again, and over time, months, years, etc., if that's stuck in their head, they're not going to get the help they need, which could end up in unfortunate circumstances, which obviously I won't go into in too much detail. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on mental health. As I've mentioned earlier on, I've got my own business now where I'm a sufferer still, but I want to go into schools, universities, colleges, etc. And just by talking to them, I'm just an average person, but I've now been able to talk about my feelings and thoughts without worrying about how people will react to it. If I can get the message across that that's what others can do as well, they can potentially get the help they need as and when they experience those issues and address them quicker. Going on to solutions and new ideas to focus on. I think a big thing, as I've mentioned already, is education. Educating people from a young age, even potentially as young as primary schools, to look after their well-being and do things daily or weekly, etc., that they're going to be enjoying doing. Obviously, when you're younger, you don't really think as much, but when you're older, you kind of analyse yourself a lot more in the situations you're in. And I think it's about putting things into practice daily that you enjoy doing, and that leads up over time to a purposeful life. I did want to say something about recovery, because obviously I pretty much will be in recovery for a long time still, even though I'm a lot better than I was. Recovery is not just possible, it's probable. I think if you can understand that there's no short-term fixes and it's a long-term illness potentially with you for life, and you can accept that, to an extent be content with the fact that you've got it for life potentially, you can kind of get over that fact and think, okay, I've got depression or anxiety or a combination of the two or other mental health illnesses. You can kind of just live your life alongside that, if that makes sense. Recovery is probable, and it's about getting the help when you need it, talking. It's all simple stuff, but people don't necessarily want to do it with mental health. It's becoming a lot easier to talk about now, because it's more on, say, for example, social media. There's a lot more exposure to it, but social media isn't the real world. It's how will you actually be able to open up and talk to someone, or would you have to resort to escaping your thoughts and feelings? There is help out there. That's the kind of thing I want to kind of leave this talk with. Whether that's a charity, professional help organisations, senior GP, or you've got mental health first aiders that are in a lot of companies now. You've got support at universities, schools, colleges, etc. Support is out there. Don't be afraid to go seek that. I'm hopefully a living proof example that, yes, I've been bad at more than one stage in my past, but I've found the courage, I suppose, to get help. And hopefully I can help others see the light in the sense that there is help out there, there's support out there. Putting all these things regularly into your daily lives will lead to a purposeful life, and you can beat depression, I guess, and not let it defeat you. That's kind of all I wanted to say. There's a lot of repetition, I suppose, in a way that I've ingrained the same sort of things in. But yeah, the key takeaways would be support is out there, talking to your family and friends, colleagues, etc., and learning to manage your own mental health, as well as looking out for the signs and hopefully helping others if they need it. If you can manage your own mental health, it'll go a long way, because obviously life can be very long and you need to be able to look after your mental health and well-being. It's got to be a priority, so you don't end up later down the line in a bad place. That's pretty much what I want to say. So if there's any questions, then obviously fire them away and I'll do my best to answer them, but hopefully you got something out of that talk. So thank you very much and take care.